If you've ever started a watercolour painting full of excitement only to realise halfway through that something feels off, the chances are you have skipped one crucial step: shape studies. When working with something as delicate and intricate as a sprig of blossom, it's tempting to dive straight into colour. But the problem is, without understanding the big shapes first, it's easy to get lost in the details, overwork your painting, or struggle with composition. So before you grab your paints, let's talk about why spending just a few minutes on timed shape studies can completely transform your final piece. Hello there, if you are new here, I'm Omar Wynne. I'm a watercolour artist and illustrator who loves sketchbooks, and I also teach creative approaches to watercolour painting. This video is actually part of a much longer in-depth process video that I created for my Patreon community. The link is in the description below. Now let's get into why shape studies are the secret to unlocking better watercolours. This is the sprig of blossom that I think I'm going to start today's study with. You might not do this already, but I'm going to start with a shape study just on printer paper. I'm going to start off by mixing up a brown. Actually, I think I'll use Van Dyke brown. That's a little bit darker in value, but you can use darker blues, purples, darker greens. The shape study is basically just looking at the shape this blossom makes. I'm not trying to do any kind of colour at the moment. It's observing, that's what it is. So we've got the first blossom here, and I'm not looking at values. Squint your eyes and literally fill in the shape. What space does this sprig of blossom occupy? I'm not trying to pick out individual blossoms either. There's a series of 3, and I can see a central stem sort of coming down there. Let's go over some reasons why it's really important to take time to do some shape studies. First of all, I think it really sharpens your observation skills because it forces you to focus on the key shapes rather than getting lost in the details. And this will build your confidence because it will remove some of that hesitation, allowing you to make bolder strokes. In a funny sort of way, it is going to save time and frustration because you are going to avoid some of the major compositional mistakes before adding colour, and it will strengthen that hand-eye coordination. I actually did a second shape study for this because it is going to encourage those economy of strokes, and you are going to be more intentional with every mark. And this is going to help you develop a stronger visual memory because the repetition helps you to see and internalize those forms and structures. Warm-ups like this will lead far more smoothly into your more elaborate watercolour versions, ensuring that you approach it with a lot more clarity and confidence. I think this one just looks a little bit more confident, but it means that I've observed this really closely twice now. I'm more prepared to get on with the actual painting of this now. So the sketchbook that I'm using is the Hahnemuhle 100% cotton. There's all sorts happening in here. And the brushes I'm going to use today are the Jackson's Art quill brush. You can just make it out. It's series 777. It's a synthetic, and my Winsor & Newton professional watercolour pans. So when you get to this stage, do not forget the shape studies you just did a minute ago. It's exactly the same. We are just going to observe, get the shapes down. You know what, let's start with the pink. So I've got my beautiful opera rose. Obviously, these blossoms are not that vibrant. I think I'm going to add a tiny bit of yellow, tiny bit of magenta, I think. And let's just plot these in. Remember, watercolour will dry a little bit lighter. I'm not trying to pick out the individual petals or anything like that. Just still really trying to stick to the shape. And there was a series of 3 about here. So having undertaken those very quick shape studies, I think I'm in a much better place to understand the complexity of this blossom without the overwhelm. That blossom is visually quite intricate with clusters of flowers and buds and branching stems, and jumping straight into colour can lead to overcomplicating details and losing some of that structure. I think it's really important to train your eyes to see the big shapes first. Many beginner artists focus too soon on individual petals and leaves instead of the overall mass. I believe shape studies teaches you to see the entire form rather than getting stuck in the details. When you have identified the most important shapes, you can focus on those for maximum impact. In a full colour painting, not all blossoms need equal detail. Some can be hinted at. Shape studies will reveal which areas could be sharp and which can stay loose. So having done the shape studies, when we are preparing for the challenge of petals overlapping each other as they do, the shape study will have allowed us to see the layers and determine which should be in the foreground or in the background. And you are going to gain a lot of efficiency when you do move into colour, because if you already understand the shapes and structure, your colour decisions will be a lot faster and more confident. You won't have to stop and correct proportions, for example, when painting. I really think this is going to boost your creative freedom when you come to do the final watercolour. When you know the structure of your subject, you can paint a lot more loosely and expressively. Shape studies will give you the confidence to suggest details rather than painstakingly render everything. And this method isn't just for blossoms, it can be used for so many things from landscapes to still life. Shape studies will help you develop the habit of breaking down complex subjects. So if you train yourself to start with shape studies, every subject is going to feel a lot more manageable.
We are going to have to let this dry now, because the last thing we have to do is add the stamen. So these little dark bits, I think that's the anther, and the other parts are the filaments. And I think I'm going to add that using coloured pencil, but in order to do that I've got to make sure this page is fully dry. Given this a quick blast with the hairdryer, and the pencil I'm going to be using to add some of the stamen details is the Caran d'Ache Luminance, and this is Cerulean Brown 585, and I'm just going to work my way downwards, adding details as I go. If you're familiar with my loose watercolour and ink technique, it's very similar to that, where I'm just going to be adding an extra, oh, these poor buds are so delicate, they're starting to wilt. I literally just picked them off a tree 30 minutes ago. This is lovely as it is, but I think this leaf here could just do with a bit more definition, so I'm going to do that to it. And there was, yes, I can just make it out. The poor things are wilting. I think this bit underneath was just that little bit darker, but that's all right. I can, that's why I'm using the coloured pencil to add this information. Missed out the stem on this one. And people often ask me, I don't know where to put the coloured pencil. Squint and find out where the most contrast is, and use your coloured pencil to add the areas of darker values. And this one, I think this edge here, I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up, it would be great if I just added a little petal there, and just here where the petals meet each other, I can see something happening in there.
The main goal of shape studies is to focus and understand the big forms so you don't get lost in the tiny details. And by adding colour pencil at this stage lets you suggest the structure without undoing some of that freshness of the watercolour. And instead of outlining everything, I'm only reinforcing key edges where clarity is needed. It's very selective. So we can let the eye fill in some of the gaps, and this keeps your sketch lively and a lot more spontaneous. Think of this as a conversation between the shape and the line. The soft washes suggest the form, and this coloured pencil gives just enough structure without taking over. We are only looking at the essentials because the trick is to stay loose. Let the shape study lead and use the coloured pencil sparingly to enhance rather than control. So if you've never tried a shape study or thought they were a waste of your time, trust me, they are not. Just 2 minutes investment before diving into colour can completely change the outcome of your painting. It helps with composition, confidence, and keeping things super loose. Let me know in the comments, do you already use shape studies? Or is this something you would like to try? I would love to hear your thoughts. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps other artists to see. As mentioned, this was part of a much longer video I shared on my Patreon. On the opposite page, I painted the same sprig of blossom using mixed media, experimenting with paint sticks, marker pens and more. If you want to see that process and get access to more exclusive content, check out my Patreon. The link is in the description. Thanks so much for watching.